Hey there! Welcome back to another incredible journey here on our channel. Today, we're diving into the inspiring story of an immigrant's brave journey from Africa, chasing the dream of a better life. Before we get started, we need your help to keep sharing stories like this. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment. Your support means everything to us. Ready to get inspired? Let's dive in. In a land where hunger is an unrelenting force, one family battles the merciless grip of scarcity. The scorching heat of the sun pales in comparison to the silent agony of hunger, a pain that gnaws at both body and soul. Kofi, Kwame, and Yara, bound together by the fight for survival, stood on the brink of a decision that would forever alter their lives. Their only lifeline was the faint promise of a better tomorrow, a glimmer of hope across the ocean. But hunger knows no boundaries, and this land, once fertile and full of promise, is now a shadow of its former self. Kofi and alongside their children, made the most harrowing choice of their lives, to leave behind everything they knew and venture into the unknown. The cost of escape from a life marked by misery would be steep, but there was no alternative. Their choices were limited: a slow death by starvation or risking the vast, treacherous ocean for a chance at something better. The smugglers, faceless men and women, offered passage for the price of a lifetime of sacrifice. They spoke of a new land, far from hunger and scarcity. But what they couldn't guarantee was safety on the sea. The boat waiting for them was fragile, barely prepared to challenge the vast, unyielding ocean. And yet, Kofi knew there was no other choice. The journey was a gamble between life and death, and he was ready to wager everything for the slimmest hope of a better future for his family. And so, without words or promises, Kofi's family embarked. The ocean, vast, immense, and silent, watched as they set forth on their journey to a promised land unknown. But what they didn't know was that the sea would be more than just a passage. It would become the stage for a cruel and unyielding destiny. Under the shroud of night, Kofi and Ama's last glimmer of hope took shape. The boat lay waiting, fragile and unsteady, a vessel for anxious hearts and distant dreams. The smugglers, faceless and nameless, stood ready as the silent sea loomed, vast and foreboding, like an open maw ready to devour all. Each step toward the boat was a risk, a haunting reminder that there was no turning back. The fragile craft, too small for so many souls, mirrored the weight of their desperation. Every moment spent on that clandestine shore made the peril of the journey more tangible. Kofi's gaze was steadfast, though the shadow of fear flickered in his eyes, while Ama clutched their children tightly, the strength of her grip betraying the battle within her. The coyotes, those who promised salvation, moved with mechanical indifference, their eyes fixed only on the currency exchange for a passage to nowhere. To them, the passengers were mere cargo, but for Kofi and Ama, their children were everything. As they boarded the boat, careful and deliberate, each movement carried the weight of finality. With heavy hearts and the aching realization of all they had left behind, Kofi's family settled into the cramped vessel, silence engulfing their fear and fragile hope. The sea awaited them, immense and indifferent, and as the boat pulled away from the shore under a darkening sky, the waves roared louder, a harbinger of the unknown journey ahead. Thus began their voyage into uncertainty, driven by the unyielding need for survival and the faint faith that a brighter tomorrow might exist beyond the horizon. But like life, the ocean offered no guarantees. The sea, vast and silent, that once seemed so promising, soon revealed its true nature. The waters began to churn, and the sky, once calm and clear, darkened with menacing clouds. The fragile boat carrying Kofi and Ama, which had embodied hope, now became a mere toy in the hands of an enraged god. The storm came without warning. Thunder cracked through the heavens, and the wind howled like a feral beast. The boat was tossed violently, its tattered sails shredded by the unrelenting gusts. Kofi and Ama clung desperately to their children, knowing they had no control over the fury of the sea. They were at the mercy of the storm, of a merciless nature that cared nothing for their dreams or their survival. atmosphere was their only companion that night. Every muffled cry, drowned out by the deafening roar of the waves, served as a reminder of how small they were against the vastness of the ocean. Kwame, their eldest son, clung to the side of the boat, trying to help in whatever way he could, but he was just a child, powerless against the storm's might. And then it happened. A massive wave crashed down upon them, and in an instant, Kwame was gone, pulled into the dark, churning waters. Kofi screamed his son's name, and Amma, her heart breaking, reached out in vain, only to watch the sea claim him. The rage of the ocean is unforgiving. The water briefly calmed, leaving behind a stillness heavy with dread. Without hesitation, Kofi dove into the dark waves, driven by a father's instinct to save his child. There was no room for thought, only the primal need to protect his son. But the sea is treacherous. As he reached the spot where Kwame had fallen, a current dragged him under. In that moment, Kofi, too, was lost forever to the ocean's depths. Now, Amma was alone. Without words, without hope, with nothing but the vastness of the sea and the weight of her grief. She stared into the void where her husband and son had vanished, but there was nothing left. The ocean had taken everything she loved. Life, no matter how cruel, does not pause. The boat continued its course, carrying only 2 souls now. The sea, like life itself, gave no time for mourning. And so, all that was left for Amma was to move forward, despite the unbearable pain. The small vessel drifted on, carrying with it the faint echoes of loss, as the waves softened, their gentle lapping a cruel contrast to the silence of despair. The sea, once vast and menacing, now stretched in silence, as though nothing had transpired. Yet within the small boat, that quiet was a cruel mirror of the immense pain that filled Amma's heart. The wind was still, and the gentle waves mocked the stillness of human suffering. What remained of Kofi and Kwame were but memories, faint echoes of what could have been. Along with Yara, Amma clung to one purpose: survival. But how does one continue when everything they loved has vanished in an instant? Every breath Amma took seemed to weigh a ton. The sea was calm now, but the anguish inside her gave no reprieve. The loss of her husband and eldest son was a shadow suffocating her, denying her the air to breathe. Yet somewhere deep inside, she knew she could not surrender. The ocean, merciless as it was, would not be her grave. Slowly, Amma rose, holding Yara close to her chest. She scanned the endless horizon for a sign, any indication of land, of direction, of hope. The emptiness that met her gaze was daunting, but the will to keep moving forward was stronger. The sea moved on, indifferent, and so did Amma. With a resilience born of sheer necessity, she adjusted the sails of the fragile boat, her trembling hands seeking control in a world where she had none. She turned her eyes to Yara, her last tether to hope, and found strength in the child's tear-streaked but innocent face. The sea does not relent, but neither does life in the face of loss. Even in the darkest of nights, there remains a sliver of light, no matter how distant. Amma and Yara were still adrift, and their journey, though fraught with despair, was not yet over. They would continue, not for the promise of brighter days, but because the human spirit compels us to move forward, one breath, one step at a time. Days passed, and with them, hope became an unbearable burden. The calm sea, once a source of comfort, now seemed a cruel jest. The boat drifted aimlessly, and what remained of its passengers was a desperate struggle for survival. The food supply, already rationed, was nearing its end, and the water, abundant at the start, was dwindling into a precious and rare commodity. The last grains of rice were split between mother and child, but hunger knows no mercy. Amma's body, fragile and worn, moved with a heavy slowness, every gesture weighed down by exhaustion. Yara, weak and bewildered, clung to her mother, her small frame trembling as hunger gnawed at her strength. Each sunrise brought diminishing hope, as if the light itself mocked their despair. The food was gone, the water was nearly depleted, and only Amma's will to survive remained. Yet even the strongest will falters when both body and spirit begin to give way. With each wave that struck the fragile boat, the distance from salvation grew more palpable. Amma's doubts seeped in like the salty air, and with them, a horrifying realization: the journey was becoming less about finding salvation and more about waiting for the inevitable end. The last drops of water glistened in a plastic bottle, a cruel reminder of how close they were to nothingness. Amma stared at it, hesitation flickering across her face, before offering the remnants to Yara and herself, sharing what little remained. But the relief was fleeting, and the vast, unchanging sea stretched endlessly around them, indifferent to their plight. Yet hunger, exhaustion, and the crushing loneliness would not be their end. Life, in all its relentless cruelty, had not yet delivered its final blow. The ocean, vast and unforgiving, still held something in store for Amma and Yara, something beyond hunger, despair, and the suffocating stillness of waiting. Something that might just be their last, fragile chance. The small boat rocked gently as the camera pulled away, the endless ocean surrounding it on all sides. The sky above was bright and clear, but the distant horizon held no promise of land, only the haunting immensity of the sea. The days dragged on as though time itself had frozen. The sky, once a protective canopy, had turned into an unforgiving enemy. The scorching sun seared Amma's and Yara's skin, while the lack of food and water became a relentless agony, burrowing into their bodies and minds. Hunger, no longer just a passing discomfort, had become a physical presence, inescapable and as vast as the sea itself. Fear had shifted. It was no longer just about losing the future but about surviving the present. Every glance Amma cast at Yara, and every silent gaze Yara returned, was a heartbreaking reminder of their fragile state. While the sea rolled on them passively, their existence had become a muted scream of despair. Hope seemed further out of reach with every passing moment, yet the primal instinct to survive kept them afloat. Amma's eyes watered from the heat as she scanned the endless horizon. The last of their water was gone. Desperation gripped her as she tore a strip of fabric from her clothing, fashioning a crude filter in a desperate attempt to catch rainwater, if it ever came. Her thoughts were dulled by pain and thirst, but even in her weakened state, she kept trying. She had to. The ocean offered no answers, no solace. Hunger was consuming more than their bodies, it gnawed at their spirit, threatening to extinguish what little hope remained. The sea lay calm and quiet, betraying no hint of their struggle. Amma lay down in the bottom of the boat, clutching Yara tightly as her breathing grew shallow and labored. Yara, too, had succumbed to silence, her fragile body too weak to move. The days stretched endlessly, blurring into a cycle of suffering and survival. Amma could no longer count how long they had been adrift. Time had ceased to matter when every moment was weighed down by pain. The sea seemed to mock their frailty, stretching the horizon further and further out of reach. Death hovered nearby, closer than ever, yet Amma refused to yield. Then, just as hope seemed extinguished and their strength nearly gone, the unthinkable happened. Amma's weakened, despairing gaze caught something on the horizon. A speck, a faint blur against the endless blue. It wasn't land, but it was something, perhaps food, perhaps help. Or perhaps just another cruel illusion. But it was all they had left. A final chance. Amma's eyes locked onto the distant mark, a faint flicker of light returning to them. Yara, too weak to understand, followed her mother's gaze, sensing a change. It wasn't much, just a glimmer of possibility. The fight, which had seemed all but lost, suddenly had a spark of life. As the fragile boat drifted aimlessly, the horizon seemed to promise something. But what was it? Salvation, or one final deception? After countless days of aimless drifting, after so much suffering and despair, land finally appeared. An unknown land, but land nonetheless. The vast, unyielding sea had at last delivered them to something solid. Yet, in their hearts, there was no celebration, no relief, only the harsh truth that what remained of them were empty, frail bodies, worn down by hunger and thirst. The ground beneath them was not the paradise they had envisioned. There were no signs of safety, no food, no water, just barren land and the blazing sun. What lay ahead was unclear. How would they go on? What awaited them beyond the horizon? These questions hung in the air, unanswered. As Amma's trembling feet touched the sand, a wave of loss and exhaustion washed over her. Yara, in her arms, could barely move. Their steps were slow, their legs shaky, as they made their way onto the shore. They had survived, but their survival came with a heavy price. The arrival, which should have marked the end of their suffering, seemed instead to signal the beginning of another battle. The hunger that had consumed them for days was not the final trial. What they faced now was not salvation, but another harsh reality, a land that demanded resilience for survival. This was not a happy ending, it was a new chapter of struggle. In the silence of dawn, Kwame and Yara sat in the sand, staring at the desolate horizon. Their journey, marked by immense loss and relentless pain, had brought them here, but it had not offered solace. The land, once a symbol of promise, was now a mystery, a riddle with no clear solution. And as they sat there, broken but alive, the only certainty they had was that the fight to survive was far from over. The end of their journey was not the end of their struggle. Life, in its cruel irony, continued to demand more from them. The camera pans away, revealing the broken boat abandoned on the shore, its tattered sails and battered hull testaments to the journey's toll. The sun shines brightly overhead, but its light carries no warmth, only the weight of an uncertain future. Kwame and Yara, backs hunched from exhaustion, begin to walk slowly into the unknown. The sea lies behind them, a relentless force that shaped their fate. But the path ahead, though unclear, demands their persistence. The fight for survival, not the promise of salvation, is now their purpose. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. If you enjoyed the story or it moved you in any way, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future stories. Together, let's keep exploring these powerful tales. Thank you, and see you in the next one.